On a dusty road in Oklahoma, the Thunderlord's biker gang is about to make the biggest mistake of their lives. They think they've found an easy target, just another overweight farmer struggling with his tractor. They see John Miller's size and assume weakness. They mock his heavy breathing and slow movements. They don't know they're taunting one of the most lethal Delta Force operators in U.S. military history. 25 bikers are about to learn that underneath that worn overalls and weather-beaten cap lies a man who led the military's most dangerous missions for 2 decades. A man whose call sign Reaper struck terror into America's deadliest enemies. As they rev their engines and circle his farm like vultures, they have no idea they're not the predators here. They're the prey. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn breaks over Miller's farm with mechanical precision at 0547 hours. John Miller rises from his bed exactly 3 minutes before his alarm would sound. A habit 20 years of military service engineered into his DNA. His large frame moves with surprising grace despite his size, each motion deliberate and efficient. The locals know him as Big John, that quiet farmer who bought the old Henderson place 5 years ago. They see his massive frame, now softer around the middle, and assume he's always been this way. They notice how he wheezes slightly climbing the steps to Earl's General Store, how his overalls strain against his bulk, how he needs to rest more often than other farmers. What they don't see is how his eyes constantly scan his surroundings, cataloging threats and escape routes. They miss how he positions himself in corners, back to the wall, clear view of all entrances. They never notice that beneath his worn work boots, his feet are always positioned for rapid movement. In his bathroom mirror, Miller studies his reflection. His face is round now, ruddy from sun and wind. Grey peppers his beard, and his hair has thinned considerably. The image is carefully crafted, a deliberate transformation from the lean, lethal operator he once was. Only his eyes remain unchanged, carrying the sharp focus of a predator. His morning routine is simple but precise. Coffee brewing in a battered pot that's precisely 8 steps from his reinforced bedroom door. Eggs from his own chickens, bacon from Peterson's butcher shop in town. The local folks think it's just a farmer's breakfast. They don't realize it's calculated protein intake, maintaining the strength hidden beneath his bulk. As he eats, Miller reviews his property through the kitchen window. The farm appears unremarkable. 180 acres of wheat and corn, a modest 2-story house, barn, and equipment shed. But every structure has been strategically placed. Every approach covered by overlapping fields of fire. The old corn silo that locals think is abandoned houses enough ammunition to supply a small army. Just checking the weather, he mumbles to himself. An old joke from his Delta days. His team used to laugh about how he could sense trouble coming. Like some farmers could smell rain, today something feels off. The air holds a tension he recognizes from countless missions. His instincts, honed through years of combat, whisper warnings. In town, people see what they expect to see. They watch him lumber into Earl's store, his breath heavy from the short walk. They smile kindly when he needs help lifting a heavy feed bag onto his truck. Sweet Martha from the diner always gives him extra pie, worrying he's not eating enough, a thought that would have made his old team howl with laughter. Earl himself is behind the counter this morning, reading about motorcycle gangs causing trouble. 2 counties over. Nasty business, he tells Miller, shaking his head. Police say they're moving this way. You be careful out there on that isolated farm of yours, John. Man alone like that could be a target. Miller nods, playing his role perfectly. Thank you kindly, Earl. I'll keep my doors locked. His voice is soft, gentle, carefully cultivated to match his appearance. Not the sharp bark of command that once sent elite operators into combat. Back at the farm, Miller begins his daily routine. To any observer, it looks like normal farm work, but each task serves a dual purpose. Checking fence lines becomes perimeter reconnaissance. Maintaining equipment doubles as weapons prep. The farm's security cameras are disguised as ordinary motion sensor lights. In his barn, behind 3 layers of hidden security, a room exists that would shock his neighbors. Walls of weapons, communications equipment, tactical gear, all meticulously maintained. His old team knew him as Reaper, not just for his lethal skills, but for his obsessive preparation. Some habits never die. The sound of distant motorcycles carries on the wind. Miller pauses in his work, head tilting slightly. His body tenses imperceptibly, muscle memory from countless combat drops taking over. The predator stirs beneath the farmer's facade. Thunderlords. Their reputation precedes them. Miller has already gathered intel through his old channels. 38 members, military-grade weapons, multiple felonies. They've been moving east, leaving a trail of terrorized small towns in their wake. A smile tugs at Miller's lips as he returns to his tasks, presenting the perfect picture of an unsuspecting farmer. In his Delta days, they used to say the most dangerous moment was when the Reaper smiled. The wind carries more than just motorcycle sounds. It brings the promise of violence, the kind John Miller has spent 5 years preparing for while pretending to be something he's not. The storm is coming, and like every storm that's tried to break this farmer, it has no idea what it's about to run into. The weight bench in Miller's basement hasn't gathered dust. Despite his appearance, he maintains a strict regimen, just not one visible to prying eyes. As he completes his hidden morning workout, his mind drifts to another time, another life. Kandahar, 2005. The mission that earned him the call sign Reaper. His team was pinned down, 3 operators wounded. Intelligence had been wrong. Instead of 4 hostiles, they faced 23. Miller eliminated 17 of them in under 4 minutes. The official report called it unprecedented tactical efficiency. His team called it terrifying. The basement walls hold shadows of that past. Between the preserved vegetables and farm, tools, hidden compartments house reminders of who he really is. Documents, medals, the curved knife that saved his life in that Brazilian jungle operation no government will acknowledge. His fingers trace a particular scar on his forearm as he works the heavy bag. Bogotá, 2010. The cartel lieutenant had gotten lucky with a machete, but luck only takes you so far. That operation ended with Miller carrying 2 wounded teammates through 3 miles of hostile territory, eliminating 9 pursuers without breaking stride. The sound of motorcycles grows closer, pulling him back to the present. Miller moves to his surveillance setup, disguised as an old ham radio station. Multiple cameras track the Thunderlords as they pass through Carlton, the nearest town. He recognizes their formation from his intelligence days. They're scouting, looking for weak targets. His mind flashes to his last mission, the one that changed everything, Kuwait City, 2018. The operation was textbook until they found the children. Human trafficking ring, using diplomatic cover. His orders were clear. Observe and report only. But some orders can't be followed. The aftermath led to his retirement. Officially, Captain John Miller left the service with honors. Unofficially, certain powerful people were relieved to see the Reaper put out to pasture. They assumed a quiet farm would dull his edge. Miller checks his security feeds again. The bikers have split into smaller groups, a standard intimidation tactic. He's seen it before. Caracas, 2015. That time it was a paramilitary group trying to control the neighborhood. They never knew what hit them. The farm wasn't random choice. Miller selected it using the same tactical analysis he once used to plan. Infiltrations. Isolated but not remote. Clear lines of sight, multiple escape routes, natural choke points that could be exploited in a conflict. Perfect territory for what he suspected might one day come. His Delta Force instructors had a saying, "You can leave the battlefield, but it never leaves you." Miller didn't try to forget. Instead, he adapted, transformed his skills. The same attention to detail that once tracked enemy movements now monitors crop rotation. The tactical planning that once coordinated strikes now organizes harvests. But he never stopped training, never stopped preparing. The weight that makes him look soft is mostly muscle, carefully hidden. The wheeze in his breathing is theatrical, practiced to perfection. Even his wardrobe is tactical, loose clothes that conceal his true physique, movements deliberately slowed to mask his capabilities. The Thunderlords are getting closer. Through his feeds, Miller watches them harass a local shopkeeper. Their leader, a man called Blade, has a military background, dishonorable discharge from the Rangers. It shows in how he positions his men. Miller's hands automatically field strip and reassemble a hidden pistol as he watches. Another habit from his Delta days. His old commanding officer used to say Miller could do it in his sleep. Had been proven true during that long night in Islamabad. The bikers think they're the wolves coming to terrorize sheep. But Miller's seen real wolves, fought them in places that don't exist on maps. These men are just dogs, strutting and snarling, about to encounter something far deadlier than they can imagine. A particular photo catches his eye, his old Delta team. The only personal item he allows himself to display, hidden among farming receipts. They'd called him Papa Bear before. He earned his darker nickname. The young operators nervous around him, not because he was cruel, but because his calm was so absolute. Even in firefights, the Reaper never seemed to rush. Miller returns to his morning routine, playing the role of simple farmer. But beneath the surface, tactical assessments run continuously. Old instincts sharpen. The predator awakens. The Thunder. Lords are about to learn what Miller's enemies discovered too late. The Reaper's patience is infinite, his preparation absolute, and his mercy non-existent. Carlton's main street turns silent as the Thunderlords roll in. 25 Harleys, chrome gleaming in the midday sun, their riders dressed in black leather adorned with skull patches. The peaceful farming community freezes like prey sensing, or predators. From his truck parked outside Earl's store, Miller observes while pretending to struggle with a heavy feed bag. His tactical assessment is automatic. 6 men with visible sidearms, 3 with concealed weapons under their cuts, 2 carrying modified shotguns in their bike holsters. Military training shows in how 4 of them move, including their leader. "Blade, need help with that, big fella?" Earl calls out, his voice carrying forced cheerfulness. Miller waves him off, keeping his focus on the bikers now dismounting outside the town's only bar. Their formation is deliberate, 3 men covering the street, 2 watching the sidewalks. Amateur, but effective for intimidating civilians. Inside. The bar, raised voices carry through open windows. The sound of breaking glass, a woman's frightened cry. Sheriff Cooper's patrol car is nowhere in sight, exactly as the gang planned. Miller notes how they timed their arrival between police patrols. Not their first rodeo. "Animals," Earl mutters, watching from his doorway. "Heard what they did over in Dawson County. Burned 3 farms, beat up old man Jenkins so bad he's still in the hospital." His voice carries genuine fear. "Sheriff says we shouldn't provoke them, just let them pass through." Miller grunts non-committally, but his mind is cataloguing details. The gang's bikes are well maintained. They have resources. Their patches indicate hierarchy, organized command structure. The way they secure territory suggests experience terrorizing small towns. Blade emerges from the bar, wiping blood from his knuckles. Early 40s, 6'2", moves like someone with combat training. His eyes scan the street, lingering briefly. On Miller, the gang leader sees what everyone sees, just another overweight farmer trying not to draw attention. "Listen up." Blade's voice carries military command presence. "This town is now under Thunderlord's protection. We'll be around to discuss fees with business owners. Anyone gets ideas about calling state police?" He lets the threat hang. Local faces pale with understanding. Miller finally manages to load his feed bag, movements deliberately clumsy. Blade watches him struggle, smirking. "Might want to lay off the pie there, farmer," he calls out, triggering laughs from his men. "All that fat'll kill you." If they could see through Miller's eyes, they'd notice different details. How the gang's security has gaps at their 7 and 4 o'clock positions. How their weapon handling suggests lack of real training. How their motorcycles, while impressive, create predictable evacuation patterns. All weaknesses a Delta operator could exploit. "Just trying to get by," Miller mumbles, playing his role perfectly. He starts his truck, the engine coughing like it needs work. Another deception. Under the hood purrs a modified high-performance engine capable of tactical pursuit. As he drives away, Miller's mind shifts into operational planning. The Thunderlords are following a pattern he's seen before. First day they show force, second day they start collecting protection money. By day 3, they're entrenched, and the real terror begins. Through his rearview mirror, he watches Blade organize his men into smaller groups. They'll spread through town, identifying targets, gathering intelligence, standard intimidation tactics. In their world, fear is currency. Back at his farm, Miller powers up his real surveillance system. Hidden cameras around town, installed months ago disguised as utility equipment, feed him real-time intelligence. The Thunderlords think they're hunting. They don't realize they're being hunted. Earl's words about Old Man Jenkins in Dawson County trigger something in Miller's tactical memory. Similar report from his intelligence sources about a gang harassing farming communities in Texas. Same signatures, same escalating pattern of violence. Miller allows himself a small smile as he watches the gang through his feeds. They're confident, organized, and completely unprepared for what they're walking into. They see scattered farms as soft targets. They don't realize they're entering a kill zone 5 years in the making. The sound of motorcycles echoes across his land. Scout team, 2 bikes, running perimeter reconnaissance, right on schedule. Miller starts his tractor, heading out to his fields. Just another farmer going about his business. But beneath the peaceful facade, the Reaper begins to plan. The Anderson farm burns at midnight. Sarah Anderson, 73 years old, watches from her porch as the Thunderlords torch her barn. Her husband Tom lies unconscious inside their house, payment for refusing their protection fees. Through Miller's night vision scope, he counts 8 gang members, their laughter carrying across the darkened fields. He could take them all down in under 30 seconds. The thought comes automatically, accompanied by tactical calculations honed through countless operations. Instead, he watches, gathering intelligence. Understanding your enemy's patterns was the first lesson they taught in Delta. 2 hours later, Sarah Anderson opens her door to find an envelope containing exactly what the gang demanded. Anonymous cash delivery. No note. When the Thunderlords return at dawn, expecting to find broken victims, they discover their protection fee paid in full. "Someone's interfering," Blade growls, pacing in front of the local bar. Miller, pretending to fix his tractor nearby, catalogues the gang leader's agitation. 3 more farms have mysteriously paid their fees, each payment delivered with military precision, no traces left. The Thunderlords respond by escalating. Old Pete Wilson's prize stallion is found dead. The Ramirez family's crops are doused with diesel. Each attack designed to spread terror, demonstrate power. But at each turn, money appears, damages are covered. The gang's attempts to break the community's spirit keep hitting an invisible wall. Sheriff Cooper finally makes an appearance, days too late. "Nothing I can do," he tells concerned citizens gathered at Earl's store. No witnesses, no proof. His deputies avoid eye contact with townspeople. Everyone knows they're on the gang's payroll now. Miller maintains his harmless facade, spends too long fixing simple equipment, gets winded carrying light loads, but his surveillance network tracks every Thunderlord's movement. Their increasing frustration manifests in sloppier tactics, wider patrol patterns. Mistakes, a Delta operator notices, "Your turn's coming, fat man," one of the bikers tells Miller at the gas station. "Blade's got special plans for that nice piece of land you got." The threat is amateur, telegraphed. Miller fumbles his wallet, drops his keys. The biker laughs, never noticing how Miller's stumble gives him perfect sightlines to the gang's new weapons cache in their truck. That night, the Thunderlords hit the Martinez dairy farm, but something's different. They find the cattle moved, buildings locked down, their attempts at sabotage thwarted by mysteriously reinforced doors and new security lights. They leave frustrated spray-painting threats across the barn walls. The next morning, Maria Martinez discovers not only payment for the gang, but professional cleaning supplies for removing the graffiti. Her security cameras, which she never installed, somehow captured perfect images of the gang's failed attack. Blade knows someone's working against them. Miller watches through his feeds as the gang leader questions his men, paranoia growing. They've never faced this type of resistance. Invisible, systematic, always one step ahead. "Don't make sense," one of the bikers complains at the bar. "Every farm we hit, someone's already been there, like they know what we're gonna do before we do it." Miller, nursing a soft drink 3 stools down, allows himself a small smile. Predictability was always the amateur's downfall. The Thunderlords respond with brute force. 3 farms hit in one night, but at each location they find the same thing: empty buildings, secured equipment, no soft targets. Their frustration boils over into bar fights, random vandalism. The careful intimidation tactics deteriorate into obvious thuggery. Miller knows they'll come for his farm next. His cameras catch them watching his property, studying his routines. They see his careful clumsiness, his apparent vulnerability, the perfect target to make an example of. What they don't see is how every defensive mistake is carefully crafted, how each apparent weakness is a carefully laid trap, how the fat farmer's stumbling movements mask perfect tactical positioning. The lines are drawn. The Thunderlords think they're about to break the one farmer too pathetic to fight back, but as Miller watches their surveillance teams through his scopes, his mind calculates firing solutions, escape routes, points of ambush. The Reaper's patience is wearing thin. Miller's encrypted laptop hums in his hidden command center. The screen displays what the Thunderlords don't want anyone to know. Their true operation extends far beyond simple extortion. Through his old military contacts and careful surveillance, he's pieced together their real business: human trafficking, gun running, drug distribution. Carlton is just the latest link in their supply chain. Found 3 more missing persons reports. His former intel officer reports via secure channel. All match the gang's pattern. Young women vanishing from towns along their route. Police investigations conveniently shut down. The intel officer pauses. "Just like old times, Reaper. You finding trouble, or trouble finding you?" Above ground, Miller maintains his role. He watches the gang's operations expand through town. Sheriff Cooper's deputy hands Blade a manila envelope behind the gas station, patrol schedules, property records, details about which farms are most vulnerable. The corruption spreads like cancer. At the diner, Miller picks at his pie while logging conversations. The Thunderlords aren't just collecting protection money anymore. They're forcing local businesses to launder cash. Martha's teenage daughter gets an invitation to work at their new club 2 towns over. The implications make Miller's trigger finger itch. 12 shipments confirmed, his laptop displays. Moving south through Oklahoma, human cargo. The same pattern they used in Texas, Arkansas, Missouri. Small towns, corrupt officials, terrorized communities too scared to resist. Through his surveillance network, Miller watches Blade meet with men in expensive suits. His directional microphones pick up fragments, expansion plans, distribution. Network ready for larger operation. The gang leader is ambitious, planning to turn Carlton into a major hub for their criminal enterprise. The Thunder Lords grow bolder. 2 more farms burned. A teenage boy hospitalized for disrespecting a gang member. Sheriff Cooper looks the other way. State police get anonymous complaints about Carlton, but evidence mysteriously disappears. The gang's influence reaches deeper than anyone suspects. Miller's intel reveals worse coming. Shipments of automatic weapons, plans for a drug processing facility. Once the Thunderlords entrench themselves, Carlton will become another lost town, its people prisoners in their own community. His surveillance catches gang members discussing his farm. Fat Man's place is perfect, one says. Remote location, good access roads. Blade wants it for the new operation. They laugh about how easy it will be to break him, how they'll make an example of the pathetic farmer. In his command center, Miller reviews tactical overlays of his property. Every approach mapped, every angle covered. 5 years of preparation hidden beneath the facade of farm security. The Thunderlords think they're choosing the battlefield. They don't realize they're walking into a prepared killing ground. The gang's enforcer, a man called Razor, starts asking questions about Miller's background. Standard procedure before targeting someone. But there's nothing to find. Miller's cover is thorough. Decades of Delta operations taught him how to hide in plain sight. His laptop pings with new intel. Photos from other towns, the Thunderlords. Destroyed. Communities broken. Lives ruined. A pattern of escalating violence that always ends the same way. Complete control through terror and corruption. Miller watches Blade's men unload crates at night. His thermal imaging reveals the contents, enough weapons to arm a small army. The gang is preparing for something big. Carlton isn't just another target. It's meant to become their fortress. Getting awful dangerous around here, Earl tells him. At the store. Maybe you should sell that farm while you can, John. Man like you, you're no match for their kind. Miller plays his role, shoulders slumped in defeat. But beneath the act, tactical calculations run like clockwork. The Thunderlords have chosen their moment to strike. Now he'll choose his. In his hidden bunker, Miller begins final preparations. Weapons checked, ammunition counted, surveillance. Systems enhanced. The gang thinks they're dealing with a broken-down farmer. They're about to meet the Reaper instead. The time for watching is almost over. The Thunderlords make their move at sunset. 3 bikes roar up Miller's driveway, Razor leading the way. Through his kitchen window, Miller watches them approach. His thermal feeds show 4 more gang members circling through his back fields, trying to be stealthy, amateurs. "Hey, fat man," Razor pounds on his door. "Time to talk business." The enforcer's confident swagger suggests he's done this dozens of times. Break the farmer's spirit, make him an example. Standard intimidation. Miller opens his door, wheezing slightly from the effort. He's added an extra layer of padding under his overalls today, making him appear even softer. "Can I help you, fellows?" His voice trembles perfectly. Razor shoves past him into the house. The other 2 bikers follow, fingering their weapons. They expect resistance. Maybe some pleading, possibly a shotgun they can easily handle. They don't. Notice how Miller's stumble positions him perfectly to control the room. "Nice place you got here." Razor smirks, deliberately knocking over a lamp. "Shame if something happened to it." The threat is crude, telegraphed. Miller catalogues their positions, weapon placements, reaction times, old habits. "Please," Miller stammers, "I'm just a farmer, don't want any trouble." He backs away, apparently cowering. The movement draws their attention exactly where he wants it, away from his subtle activation of the perimeter sensors tracking the outside team. Razor pulls out a knife, admiring its edge. "Blade's taken a special interest in your property, says it'd make a perfect distribution center." He grins. "So you've got 2 choices. Sell to us cheap, or—" The knife flashes as he embeds it in Miller's kitchen table. The outside team has reached his barn. Miller's hidden cameras show them preparing to start a fire. Standard gang tactic. Burn the outbuildings first. Demonstrate their power. They haven't noticed the pressure plates they're standing on. I can't sell, Miller pleads. This farm's all I have. His performance is perfect. Voice cracking, hands shaking. Razor laughs, stepping closer. The enforcer's boots scrape across Miller's carefully polished floor, missing the subtle markings that delineate exact distances. Wrong answer, fat man. Razor swings without warning, a brutal haymaker meant to drop Miller to his knees, the kind of punch that's terrorized countless victims before. But this victim is different. Miller's dodge is almost lazy, a simple shift that makes Razor miss by millimeters. To the other bikers, it looks like luck. They don't see the precise footwork, the perfect weight distribution. 20 years of close-quarter combat disguised as a clumsy stumble. Please, Miller repeats, now positioned exactly where he wants to be. I don't want trouble. His thermal feed shows the outside team starting their fire. Time to make a point. Razor swings again. This time, Miller doesn't dodge. Instead, he lets the punch graze him, using the momentum to accidentally hit the hidden switch under his counter. Outside, the pressure plates activate. His barn's sprinkler system engages, dousing the would-be arsonists with fire-retardant foam. The enforcer grabs Miller's shirt, frustrated by his inability to provoke real fear. Listen, you fat piece of... His words cut off as Miller trips, his substantial weight seemingly falling against Razor's knee. The crack is audible. Pure accident, it appears. The clumsy farmer stumbling in fear. Only someone with combat experience would recognize the precise angle, the exact pressure point. Targeted. Razor collapses, clutching his shattered kneecap. Oh God, I'm so sorry. Miller helps Razor up, his movements all panic and confusion. The other bikers are too focused on their fallen leader to notice how Miller's assistance positions them away from their weapons. The outer team storms in, soaked and furious. Boss, someone rigged the barn. Motion sensors, sprinklers, everything. Razor glares through pain-filled eyes. This ain't over, fat man. Nobody embarrasses the Thunder Lords. They half-carry their enforcer out, trying to maintain dignity. Miller watches them leave, his wheezing fear act maintained until they're gone. Only then does he allow himself a small smile. Through his cameras, he sees Blade waiting at the end of his driveway, watching the failed intimidation attempt. The gang leader's expression is calculating. This didn't go as planned. The fat farmer was supposed to break easily. Instead, his enforcer is injured, his arson team humiliated, and nothing went right. In his kitchen, Miller begins cleaning up, maintaining his role. But his movements are precise, economical. The trembling fear is gone. His hidden cameras track the gang's retreat. His security systems log their movements. First blood has been drawn. The Thunder Lords will have to respond. Their reputation demands it. But as Miller watches them leave, he knows they still haven't learned their real lesson. They think they've been unlucky. They don't realize they've just received their first warning from the Reaper. After the Thunder Lords leave, Miller waits exactly 17 minutes before activating his full security protocol. The bumbling farmer vanishes. His movements become fluid, precise. The Reaper emerging from his disguise. The command center beneath. His barn hums to life. What appears to be a root cellar transforms into a military-grade operations room. Multiple screens display thermal imaging of the gang's retreat. Surveillance drones track their movements through encrypted feeds. Everything is recorded, analyzed, catalogued. Time to wake up some old friends, Miller mutters. His fingers fly. Across a keypad, hidden behind farm equipment receipts, the barn's reinforced floor slides open, revealing his true arsenal. Not the hunting rifles locals might expect, but weapons that would make special forces envious. Modified M4 carbines with advanced optics, Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifles, Suppressors, night vision equipment, tactical gear, all meticulously maintained. Each weapon is zeroed, each piece of equipment tested weekly. The Reaper never lets his tools grow dull. His armory tells the story of a man who never stopped preparing. Claymore mines disguised as garden fixtures, communication jammers hidden in old farm machinery. Even his tractor conceals a weapons cache, its engine modified for pursuit capabilities. Miller moves through his equipment with practiced efficiency. Body armor concealed beneath loose clothing. Backup weapons positioned throughout the property. 5 years of preparation, every detail considered, every contingency planned for. His phone chirps. Secure line. "Watchmaker here," a familiar voice says. His old demolitions expert from Delta. "Got your message. Equipment's prepped. Whole team's standing by." Miller allows himself a grim smile. The Thunderlords think they have numbers. They don't realize what's coming. The command center's main screen displays satellite imagery of Carlton County. Red dots mark gang positions. Blue marks their patrol routes. Green highlights their vulnerabilities. Miller's tactical analysis software, officially restricted to military use, calculates optimal engagement zones. Running facial recognition now, his system reports. Photos from the gang's earlier visit reveal more than they intended. 3 members with military backgrounds, 2 with outstanding warrants, 1 former police officer, all weaknesses to exploit. His cameras catch Blade organizing a larger force at their temporary headquarters, the abandoned mill outside town. The gang leader is angry, his enforcers' humiliation demanding response. Miller watches them prep weapons, plan routes, coordinate. Teams. In his barn's hidden shooting range, Miller runs combat drills. His size conceals surprising speed. Each movement is efficient, lethal, muscles remembering years of military conditioning. The Thunderlords saw a wheezing fat man. They're about to meet someone very different. The wall behind his workbench slides away, revealing a medical station that would impress combat hospitals. Field surgery equipment, blood supplies, trauma kits. The Reaper believes in being thorough. His drone feeds show the gang splitting into strike teams. They're planning something big, probably tonight. Miller activates additional sensors, engaging countermeasures hidden throughout his property. Motion detectors disguised as sprinkler heads. Pressure plates beneath innocent-looking gravel. Even his scarecrow conceals a thermal camera. Satellite feed confirmed, his system reports. 28 hostiles, multiple vehicles. Miller nods. He's been tracking their weapons shipments. Knows exactly what they're bringing. His defenses are designed accordingly. The Thunderlords think they're assaulting a farm. They don't realize they're entering a prepared battlefield. Every approach is covered, every angle calculated. 5 years of tactical planning hidden beneath a carefully crafted facade of rural simplicity. In his command center, Miller reviews final preparations, weapons checked, ammunition positioned, medical supplies ready, security systems primed. The Fat Farmer Act has served its purpose. Now it's time for the Thunderlords to meet the real John Miller. The Reaper is ready for war. Dusk settles over Carlton County like a shroud. Miller's surveillance feeds show the Thunderlords gathering at the old mill. Their numbers swelled to nearly 40. Blade stands before them, his voice carrying across Miller's directional microphones. "That Fat Farmer made us look weak," the gang leader snarls. "Tonight we show everyone what happens when you disrespect the Thunderlords." His men check weapons, don tactical gear. Some wear military surplus body armor. They're taking no chances after Razor's humiliation. In his command center, Miller watches their preparations with professional interest. Their approach will be from 3 directions. Standard tactical doctrine, poorly applied. They've positioned snipers on the water tower, but missed the superior firing positions he mapped years ago. "Getting similar movement patterns to Kuwait," Miller murmurs, comparing tactical overlays. "Same mistakes." His system tracks heat signatures, vehicle positions, weapons distributions. The gang thinks they're being clever. They don't realize They're being dissected, Earl calls from town, voice shaking. John, you need to get out of there. They're coming in force. Sheriff Cooper's been told to stay away. No help coming. Miller thanks him, maintains his frightened farmer act. But his eyes never leave the tactical displays. The Thunderlords have done their homework, or think they have. Plans of his property stolen from county records. Satellite images showing apparent vulnerabilities. Power company schedules indicating when to cut his electricity. All carefully crafted deceptions Miller spent years putting in place. Watchmaker, are you set? Miller asks through his secure channel. His old demolitions expert responds from a hidden position. Charges in place. Whole properties wired. Just say when. The gang thinks they're attacking a farm. They're walking into a prepared kill zone. Blade positions his forces with military precision, revealing his ranger's training. But his tactical planning shows why he was discharged. Too rigid, too predictable, too focused on overwhelming force rather than tactical advantage. The kind of commander who gets men killed. In town, people lock their doors, draw their curtains. They expect to hear screams from Miller's farm tonight, to find another broken man in the morning. Another victory for the Thunderlords. They don't know they're about to witness something very different. Miller's preparations are methodical. Weapons positioned. Escape routes confirmed. Medical supplies ready. Each motion practiced thousands of times in countless combat zones. His size conceals speed. His wheezing breath masks perfect conditioning. The Reaper prepares for harvest. The gang's radio traffic increases. Miller's interceptors catch fragments of their communications. Tactical. Frequencies, call signs, coordinate systems. They're playing soldier, mimicking military operations they barely understand. Against civilians, it's enough. Against a Delta operator, it's suicide. Primary teams in position, his system reports. The Thunderlords have surrounded his farm. Thermal imaging shows them concealed in his wheat fields, behind his equipment, along his fence lines. Exactly where he wants them. The last light fades. Thunder rumbles in the distance, a storm approaching from the west. Miller allows himself a small smile. The coming storm isn't the one the gang should fear. All units, prepare to execute. Blades. Voice crackles across intercepted channels. His men tense, weapons ready. They expect to find a terrified farmer. Instead, they'll meet the Reaper. Miller's fingers dance across his command console, activating final preparations. In town, Martha from the diner says a prayer for the fat farmer who always tipped well. Earl hopes Miller got away in time. Sheriff Cooper drinks in his office, trying to forget what's about to happen. None of them know they're about to witness the birth of a legend. The Thunderlords make their final equipment checks. Night vision, goggles, tactical radios, modified weapons. They think they're prepared for anything. They're wrong. In his command center, Miller watches them position themselves exactly where his tactical analysis predicted. Everything is proceeding according to plan. The Reaper's patience has paid off. The storm is about to break. The first shot shatters Miller's kitchen window at 9:47 p.m., a warning shot deliberately high. Through his thermal imaging, he watches the sniper congratulate himself on his accuracy. The man doesn't realize his position was compromised 3 hours ago. Oh God, oh God! Miller shouts, his voice carrying perfectly to the gang's observation posts. He stumbles around his kitchen, silhouette visible through curtained windows, knocks over chairs, fumbles with his phone. The perfect picture of panic. Target is mobile. A gang member radios. Appears to be attempting contact with law enforcement. Miller suppresses a smile. They're monitoring his cell signal, just as he expected. The fake 911 call they're intercepting is pre-recorded. Blade's voice crackles across their communications. All units, execute Phase 1. Herd him toward the barn. Standard intimidation tactics. Miller has seen it dozens of times. Isolate. Terrorize. Break their spirit. More shots ring out, strategically placed to drive him toward their chosen kill box. Miller obliges, running awkwardly toward his barn. His heavy breathing and panicked movements mask perfect tactical positioning. Each stumble places him behind prepared cover points. Target taking the bait, someone reports, moving exactly as predicted. The satisfaction in their voice makes Miller think of other overconfident opponents. The cartel hit squad in Bogota, the mercenaries in Kurdistan, all professionals who died of certainty. In the barn, Miller trips over his own feet, crashes into equipment. The noise carries well, another calculated performance. His thermal feeds show gang members moving closer, emboldened by his apparent incompetence. "Please," he calls out, voice trembling, "I have money. We can work something out." The desperation in his tone is perfect. Product of 3 months practicing in his command center, calibrating every nuance. Thunder Lords converge on the barn. Their night vision gear gives them confidence in the darkness. They don't realize Miller's accidental fumbling has driven them away from the barn's actual defensive positions. "Looks like the fat man's finally learning," Blade broadcasts. "Time to teach him who's really in charge." The gang leader's arrogance bleeds through his tactical communications. Another commander who mistakes cruelty for strength. Miller's apparent panic has drawn them closer. 38 heat signatures now within his primary engagement zone. His surveillance system catalogues their weapons, positions, force distribution. Every detail feeding into tactical analysis software. Target cornered in barn, someone reports. No weapons visible. Appears completely vulnerable. Through his cameras, Miller watches them congratulate themselves on their tactical superiority. Their night vision equipment missing the pressure plates they're standing on. "All units, prepare for final approach," Blade orders. "Let's show Carlton what happens to people who disrespect the Thunder Lords." Their confidence is absolute. The fat farmer is trapped, helpless, alone. In the barn's shadows, Miller maintains his act. Wheezing, stumbling, each movement deliberately clumsy, but his breathing is actually measured, perfect, his positioning exact. Years of Delta operations, distilled into a performance designed to create fatal overconfidence. The gang's tactical teams reach their final assault positions. Everything going according to their plan. They don't realize they're achieving perfect distribution across his prepared kill boxes. "Please," Miller calls out one last time. "I'm just a farmer." His voice cracks expertly. Through his feeds, he watches them laugh, watches them step exactly where he wants them. The Thunder Lords think they're springing a trap. They don't realize they're already caught in one. Miller's hand moves to his tactical console. The Reaper's harvest is about to begin. "Execute final. Breach," Blade commands. "Let's finish this." Miller allows himself a small smile. Yes, he thinks, let's. The Thunder Lord's final breach begins with textbook precision. Flashbangs through the barn windows, coordinated entry teams, standard room-clearing tactics, everything by the book. It's the wrong book. Miller's switch activation is almost lazy. His barn's lighting system, designed to his exact specifications, activates. Not the main overheads, but UV strobes, strategically placed to render night vision equipment worse than useless. The gang's advantage becomes instant blindness. "What the fu—" The pointman's curse cuts off as Miller's first countermove begins. The barn's floor, apparently solid concrete, shifts. Sections drop half an inch, others rise slightly. Barely noticeable changes that destroy practiced footwork disrupt tactical positioning. "Lost visual," someone shouts. "NVG's malfunctioning." The professional veneer cracks. Blind, off balance, their careful formation dissolves. Standard tactics become liability as they crash into each other in the strobing darkness. Miller moves like liquid shadow. Nothing left of the wheezing farmer. His size, which they mistook for weakness, drives his first attack. 3 precise strikes. 2 gang members down before they realize they're hit. No wasted motion, no mercy. "Contact right!" The radio call drowns in feedback. Miller's jamming suite, hidden in the barn's walls, activates. Their communications dissolve into static, coordination lost, unit cohesion shattered. Outside, Blade tries to restore order. Secondary teams breach and clear, all directions. But his men hesitate. The barn's strobing lights cast monster shadows. Strange sounds echo, recordings Miller planted days ago, creating audio chaos. The Thunderlord's tactical confusion spreads, teams collide in doorways, friendly fire incidents narrowly avoided. Their training dissolves into panic as an invisible force seems to strike from everywhere and nowhere. "Where is he?" someone screams. "How's he moving so fast?" They fire at shadows, at noises, at nothing. Miller's decades of CQB experience show. In every movement, he's fought in darker places, against better opponents. A gang member catches a glimpse of movement, fires a burst from his modified AR-15. The shots hit nothing but air. The return strike is instantaneous. Professional fighters recognize the technique, Sistema, the Russian martial art. But recognition doesn't help as bones crack. "Fall back," Blade orders. "Regroup outside." Too late. Miller's automated systems engage. The barn's apparent exits become death funnels. Not from gunfire, the Reaper isn't ready for killing yet, but from calculated chaos. More strobes, directional sonic weapons, disorientation gas. Those who make it outside face new problems. The farm's exterior lighting creates a maze of shadows and killing zones. Every practiced assault position becomes a trap. Every tactical advantage turns against them. "He's playing with us," Razor realizes, his tactical experience finally showing. This whole thing was... His epiphany ends in unconsciousness as Miller's attack finds him. The Enforcer never sees what hits him. The Thunderlord's careful tactical assault has become a nightmare. Professional fighters reduced to stumbling targets. Military training made useless by an environment designed to negate every advantage. Through his thermal imaging, Miller watches them cluster, try to reform. Their training tells them to stick together, present a unified defense. It's exactly what he planned for. His next series of attacks pick them apart with surgical precision. "This isn't possible," Blade's voice carries across the chaos. "He's just one man, a fucking farmer." The gang leader's frustration shows in tactical mistakes, sending men into obvious kill zones, falling for basic misdirection. In the barn's rafters, Miller allows himself a predator's smile. They still think they're fighting a farmer. They haven't begun to understand what they're actually facing, or why his Delta Force teammates called him Reaper. The night has just begun. The Thunderlords regroup in what they think is a defensive position. 15 men, backs to Miller's grain silo, covering all approaches, standard perimeter tactics. In his command center, Miller watches their infrared signatures cluster exactly where he predicted. "This is wrong," one of them mutters. "Nobody moves like that. Nobody fights like that." The man's military background shows in his growing realization this isn't just combat. It's something else. Something he's only heard whispers about. Miller's attack comes from an impossible angle, not from the barn's shadows or the equipment's cover, but from above. He drops from the silo's maintenance ladder, his size belying lethal grace. Before they can react, 3 more Thunderlords collapse. "Delta!" The recognition comes too late. The former military member finally understands what they're facing. "He's fucking Delta Force. We need to..." His warning ends in unconsciousness as Miller's strike finds its mark. The remaining gang members open fire, their shots illuminating the darkness. But Miller is already gone, his movement patterns drilled through thousands of combat operations. Every shadow conceals a prepared position. Every angle has been calculated. Through his tactical radio, Blade tries to coordinate a response. "All units converge. Box him in." Amateur tactics against a man who wrote the book on asymmetric warfare. Miller's counterstrikes flow like water, each movement setting up the next engagement. Impossible, someone gasps, watching Miller flow through their defenses. He has to be 60, and that size. They don't understand how decades of Delta operations transformed Miller's bulk into a weapon. How every extra pound carries trained muscle memory. The grain silo's exterior lights suddenly shift, casting disorienting shadows. Another prepared system activates, turning their defensive position into a killing zone. Miller's attacks come from multiple angles now, his CQB expertise on full display. This was his plan, Razor realizes through his pain-hazy consciousness. Every move we made, The Enforcer finally understands they never had a chance. Every tactical decision led them deeper into the Reaper's trap. Miller's movements demonstrate why Delta Force operators earned their legendary status. Each strike targets nerve clusters, pressure points, weak spots in their tactical gear. Non-lethal, but devastating. The Thunderlord's combat experience means nothing against his level of training. "Fall back!" Blade orders, his voice carrying genuine fear now. "Everyone fall back to—" His command cuts off as Miller appears beside him, moving like a ghost through his security detail. The gang leader's Rangers training proves useless against Delta-level CQB. More Thunderlords arrive, drawn by the chaos. They find their comrades scattered, broken, professional fighters reduced to groaning heaps. Their tactical gear, their weapons, their training, all meaningless against an opponent who spent decades perfecting the art of violence. "Who are you?" Blade demands, trying to assume a fighting stance despite his injuries. His question reveals his fundamental mistake. He still thinks he's fighting the farmer, just with unexpected skills. Miller's response is purely physical, a combination of strikes that flow like poetry, each movement setting up the next. The gang leader's defense crumbles against techniques perfected in combat zones across the globe. This isn't just fighting, it's warfare distilled into human form. In the darkness, the remaining Thunderlords face a growing nightmare. The fat farmer has vanished, replaced by something from military legend. Every shadow holds danger. Every tactical position becomes a trap. They're no longer hunters. They're prey, and the Reaper is just getting started. The Thunderlords' retreat becomes chaos as they realize the true nature of their situation. Every escape route leads to another trap. Every tactical fallback position becomes a killing zone. Miller's farm isn't just defended, it's a masterwork of military engineering. The roads are blocked. A biker's panicked voice crackles over their compromised radio net. Steel barriers have emerged from hidden trenches, cutting off vehicle escape. Others find their motorcycles disabled by cleverly concealed EMP devices. The predators have become trapped prey. "Counter-attack," Blade orders, trying to regain control. "Push toward the—" His command dies as darkness engulfs the farm. Not just lights out, but complete blackness. Miller's systems have killed every ambient light source for half a mile. In this perfect dark, the Thunderlord's night vision equipment suddenly activates without command, another of Miller's electronic warfare tricks. The simultaneous light amplification blinds 20 men at once. Their cursing is cut short by precise strikes from the shadows. He's everywhere. Someone fires wildly, their professional demeanor cracking. The shots illuminate nothing but empty air. The return strike comes from an impossible angle, demonstrating close-quarter combat skills honed in the world's darkest places. Miller moves through his killing ground like a ghost. Each step lands on prepared positions, every movement flowing between pre-planned angles of attack. The gang's tactical training means nothing here. This isn't a farm. It's a combat facility disguised as agricultural land. "Fall back to the equipment shed." 3 men try to establish a defensive position. They don't realize the shed's walls contain directional sonic weapons. Their attempt at coordination dissolves into disoriented chaos as subsonic pulses disrupt their inner ears. The remaining Thunderlords cluster in scattered groups, trying to maintain unit cohesion. Professional fighters reduced to scared prey. Through his thermal imaging, Miller watches them make every mistake he planned for. Each defensive position they choose has been prepared for this moment. "Listen!" Razor shouts suddenly. The ground. Too late, they notice the subtle vibrations. Underground systems activating, machinery hidden beneath innocent-looking farm equipment. Miller's preparations run deeper than they imagined. Water suddenly sprays from irrigation pipes, but it's not water. The liquid contains a special forces-grade irritant. Not lethal, but devastating to combat effectiveness. Professional fighters collapse, coughing, their tactical gear useless against weapons designed for actual warfare. He's not trying to kill us. A former military member realizes through his pain. He's schooling us, showing us. The man's combat experience finally lets him understand. This isn't just defeat, it's education written in bruises and broken bones. Miller's attack patterns demonstrate decades of Delta Force experience. Each strike sets up the next engagement. Every defensive position the gang takes becomes a target. Zone! Their attempts at tactical response play directly into his strategy. "This whole place," Blade gasps, his Rangers training finally recognizing the truth. "Everything we see, it's all—" The gang leader understands too late. The vulnerable. Farm was a facade. They haven't invaded Miller's property. They've walked into a prepared military operations zone. The night dissolves into a lesson in modern warfare. Thunderlords find themselves engaged by an enemy they can't see, can't fight, can't escape. Their weapons prove useless, their tactics meaningless, their experience inadequate against an operator of Miller's caliber. And through it all, Miller's attacks maintain surgical precision. No lethal strikes, no permanent damage, just clinical demonstration of the gap between amateur violence and professional warfare. The Reaper is teaching them the difference between thugs and soldiers. The trap has sprung completely. The hunters have become the hunted, and their education is far from over. Blade's burner phone connects on the second ring. "Send everyone," he orders, his voice tight with pain. "Every chapter within range. This isn't some farmer. He's military, special forces." The gang leader's pride dissolves in the face of survival. Through his surveillance network, Miller tracks 5 separate Thunderlords chapters mobilizing. Nearly 100 additional bikers arming up, mounting up, heading his way. His tactical display marks their approach vectors in red, everything proceeding exactly as calculated. "Time to wake the ghosts," Miller murmurs into his encrypted comm. The response is immediate. Voices he hasn't heard since his Delta days. Men who've been waiting for his signal. Reapers calling. A gruff laugh carries through his tactical radio. Must be something special. Calculator, his old demolitions expert, sounds eager. 5 years of retirement dissolving at the prospect of action. "Thunderlord's bike gang," Miller reports, getting ambitious, bringing reinforcements. His hand moves across his command console, activating secondary defensive systems. "Could use some exercise." "About time." Shadow's voice joins the channel. The team's infiltration specialist has been positioned nearby for months, waiting, getting soft watching you play farmer. The old banter feels natural, comfortable. Delta operators never really retire. Blade's reinforcements approach from 3 directions, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Professional formation, tactical spacing, almost military precision. Miller allows himself a small smile. They're still thinking like a gang, not realizing they're riding into a military operation. "Got eyes on the first wave," Calculator reports. "Nice bikes. Be a shame if something happened to them." The demolitions expert has spent weeks preparing the surrounding roads, engineering hidden surprises into every approach. The Thunderlords' reinforcements hit the first trap 3 miles out. Caltrops hidden in shadow shred their lead bike's tires. Not random placement, precisely calculated to disable vehicles while preventing lethal crashes. The Reaper's mercy has limits, but it exists. Second group splitting off, Shadow reports, taking the county access road. They think they're being clever, using alternate routes. Miller's surveillance shows them riding directly into prepared kill zones. Through his thermal imaging, Miller watches the original Thunderlords regroup. Their professional veneer cracks further as they realize help isn't coming. Not intact, anyway. The sound of distant motorcycles crashing carries through the night. Package delivered. Calculator's voice holds satisfaction. The demolitions expert has sealed off another approach route. Not with explosives. Too obvious. Hidden barriers rising from innocent-looking drainage ditches. Engineering turned to tactical advantage. More Thunderlords chapters respond to Blade's call. Miller's intelligence network tracks their movements. Some have police-grade weapons. Others carry military surplus. None of it matters against operators who've faced actual military forces. Like old times, Shadow comments, his position undetectable even to Miller's thermal imaging. The infiltration specialist has already compromised the gang's hasty command. Structure. Their attempts at coordination collapse into confusion. The reinforcements that make it through the outer perimeter face new problems. Miller's farm appears empty now, the previous fighting hidden by darkness. But every shadow conceals a Delta operator. Every approach angle has been pre-sighted by men who've fought in actual wars. Remember Bosnia? Calculator asks over there. Tactical net. That night outside Sarajevo, Miller remembers. Outnumbered, surrounded, victory achieved through precision and planning. Just like now, Blade's phone connects again, this time with panic. "They're not just stopping us," he reports to his superiors. "They're hunting us. This isn't..." The gang leader's tactical experience finally lets him understand. They haven't walked into a defense, they've stumbled into an operation. The night fills with the sound of failing engines, squealing brakes, cursing bikers. The Thunderlords' reinforcements discover too late that their numbers mean nothing. Not against men who've spent decades perfecting the art of asymmetric warfare. Miller watches through his command center as his old team systematically dismantles the gang's attempted reinforcement. Professional violence executed with surgical precision. The Reaper's harvest has help now, and the real operation is just beginning. The Thunderlords launch their mass assault at midnight, nearly 60 bikes, roaring through the darkness. Those that made it past the outer defenses converge on Miller's farm from multiple directions. Blade, desperate to salvage his reputation, leads from the front. Full tactical spread, the gang leader orders. No more games, burn it all. His remaining men deploy with practiced coordination, military-grade weapons, combat-style movements, almost impressive for amateurs. Miller watches through his command center, his old team's voices calm in his ear. "Just like Kandahar," Calculator muses. "Remember how that insurgent group thought numbers meant victory? They're bunching up on the south approach," Shadow reports. Classic gang tactics, intimidation through mass. The infiltration specialist's voice holds professional disdain. "Want me to thin them out?" "Negative," Miller responds. "Let them commit fully." His thermal imaging shows the Thunderlords achieving exactly the distribution he planned for. Calculator. Initiate pattern Delta. The ground erupts beneath the gang's front line. Not explosions, hydraulic plates concealed under innocent-looking farm soil. Bikes flip, formations scatter. Professional coordination dissolves into chaos as riders crash. Into each other. "Second wave incoming," Shadow calls out, using the drainage ditches for cover. The gang's more experienced members attempt tactical movement, applying half-understood military concepts. Miller's response demonstrates the difference between imitation and experience. Automated systems activate. The drainage ditches designed. To his specifications, suddenly flood. Not with water, with industrial-grade foam. Bikes lose traction. Tactical positions become traps. These boys never heard of terrain modification. Calculator chuckles. The demolitions experts' preparations transform the battlefield with each passing moment. Ground that seems solid becomes unstable. Cover positions expose attackers to pre-sighted fields of fire. Blade tries to rally his forces, showing his ranges. Training. Push through. They can't stop all of us. His men respond with renewed aggression, unleashing a barrage of firepower that would overwhelm normal defenders. But they're not facing normal defenders. Miller's team moves like ghosts through the chaos. Each operator exactly where they need to be, executing plans rehearsed countless times in actual combat zones. Remember the rules, Miller broadcasts to his team. Non-lethal takedowns only. We're teaching, not terminating. The Reaper's mercy remains calculated, precise, breaking bodies but preserving lives. The Thunderlord's assault deteriorates into a lesson in modern warfare. Their attempts at military-style operations meet genuine special forces tactics. Every coordinated push becomes a demonstration of their inadequacy. West Group is retreating. Shadow reports with professional satisfaction. Amazing how fast they learn when properly motivated. The infiltration specialists' actions remain invisible but devastating. East Group attempting to establish fire. Support positions, calculator adds. Cute, they've got their guns set up exactly where we planned. The demolitions experts' next series of activations turns their careful positioning against them. Miller moves through the battlefield like a force of nature. His size, which the gang mocked, drives unstoppable attacks. Each strike precisely calculated, each movement setting up the next engagement. The Reaper harvests without haste or anger. They're breaking, Shadow observes. The Thunderlord's assault collapses into pockets of resistance. Professional pretense crumbles in the face of genuine military expertise. Want us to pursue? Negative. Miller responds. Let them run. The message is delivered. Through his thermal imaging, he watches gang members abandon bikes, weapons, pretensions of tactical capability. The education is complete. Blade remains, his rangers training warring with survival instinct. What are you? He demands into the darkness. What is this place? The answer comes from all directions, Delta operators speaking as one. This is what real warriors look like. Their voices carry decades of combat experience, of missions that never existed, of victory achieved through precision rather than power. In the command center, Miller watches the gang's remnants flee into the night. His team has demonstrated the difference between thugs playing soldier and men who faced actual war. The siege is over, but the Reaper's work isn't quite finished. Blade stands alone in the farmyard, his remaining lieutenants scattered or unconscious. The gang leader's Rangers training finally serves him well. He recognizes the difference between defeat and total destruction. But pride keeps him from running. "Face me!" he shouts into the darkness. "One-on-one! Or are Delta operators too elite for a fair fight?" His challenge carries more bravado than sense. Through thermal imaging, Miller watches the gang leaders. Desperate posturing. He's got something in his jacket, Shadow reports. Left side, probably a backup piece. The infiltration specialist's observation is precise, professional. Want me to neutralize him? Negative. Miller's voice carries calm authority. He needs to understand. The Reaper rises from his command center, moving toward the final confrontation. Time to end this properly. Miller emerges from the shadows, his bulk somehow more imposing now that he's dropped the farmer act. Each movement shows lethal grace, decades of combat experience visible in his stance. Nothing left of the wheezing, clumsy persona. There you are, you fat! Blade's insult dies. As Miller closes the distance with impossible speed, the gang leader's hand drops to his hidden weapon, but he's already lost the initiative. Delta Force close-quarter combat flows like water around his defenses. 20 years, Rangers, Miller says conversationally, deflecting Blade's desperate attacks. dishonorably discharged for excessive force. You never learned the difference between violence and warfare. Each word is punctuated by precise strikes that dismantle the gang leader's resistance. You don't know me. Blade pulls his backup gun, but the movement is amateur, telegraphed. Miller's response comes straight from Delta Force training manuals. Techniques practiced thousands of times in actual combat zones. The gun clatters away. Blade's Ranger's hand-to-hand proves useless against Miller's decades of Special Forces experience. Each exchange demonstrates the gulf between military service and true combat expertise. I know exactly what you are, Miller continues, his attacks flowing with surgical precision. A man who couldn't handle real military discipline, who thinks intimidating civilians makes him a warrior. The lesson is written in bruises and broken bones. Calculator's voice comes through tactical comms. Police finally responding. 8 minutes out. The demolitions expert sounds amused. Guess someone finally reported the noise. Plenty of time, Miller responds. His next series of strikes targets pressure points, nerve clusters, weak spots that Rangers training never covered. Blade's resistance crumbles under authentic Delta Force close-quarter combat. Your men will recover, Miller informs the fallen gang leader. Nothing permanent. But they'll remember this night. Remember the difference between thugs and soldiers. His voice carries the weight of countless classified operations. Through his tactical network, Miller watches the remaining Thunderlords flee into the darkness. His team has broken more than just their bodies. Their illusions of military prowess lie shattered. The education is complete. Area secured, Shadow reports. All hostiles neutralized or retreated, no casualties. The infiltration specialist's satisfaction is evident, just like old times, Reaper. Package delivered at the police station, Calculator adds. All the evidence they'll need, including some interesting weapons serial numbers. The demolitions expert's preparations extend beyond just combat. Miller stands over Blade's unconscious form, his breath steady despite the exertion. The gang leader's attempt to play soldier has met real military expertise. The result was inevitable. Clean up and clear out, he orders his team. Back to our cover positions. Delta operators fade into the darkness, leaving no trace of their presence. By morning, only the results of their work will remain. Police sirens approach in the distance. Miller allows himself a small smile as he watches his team disappear. Tomorrow, he'll be the bumbling farmer again, telling tales of lucky escapes and mysterious saviors. But tonight, the Thunderlords learned why some soldiers never truly retire, why some warriors remain deadly despite their disguises, why the Reaper's legend was earned through more than just violence. The night belongs to real soldiers. Dawn breaks over Carlton County, revealing the scale of the night's events. Abandoned motorcycles litter the approaches to Miller's farm. Police photographers document discarded weapons, military-grade tactical gear, evidence of the Thunderlords. Failed assault. Strangest thing I've ever seen, Sheriff Cooper tells reporters. Looks like they fought ghosts. The lawman studies Miller's apparently untouched farmhouse with bewilderment. Not a single casualty, but 43 gang members in custody, all with precision injuries, professional work. Miller plays his part perfectly, speaking to deputies with carefully rehearsed confusion. It was terrible, he wheezes, his farmer persona back in place. Lights and noise everywhere. Then these shadows appeared. Never seen anything like it. Through hidden cameras, he watches EOD teams discover Calculator's devices. Their professional assessment, military-grade engineering. Someone with serious training did this. The demolitions expert's work leaves no traceable signatures, just more questions. The Thunderlord survivors tell conflicting stories. They were everywhere, one explains from his hospital bed, moving like special forces or something. Others describe impossible attacks, precision strikes, coordination that gang tactics couldn't match. Interesting theory about Delta Force. Involvement. an FBI agent tells her partner, reviewing witness statements. But why would elite operators defend a random farm? They scan Miller's background check. No military record, no combat training, nothing suspicious. Earl visits that afternoon, bringing coffee and concern. Lucky thing, those mysterious helpers showing up, the store owner says carefully, almost like someone was watching out for us. His eyes hold new respect as he studies Miller's seemingly harmless bulk. Just got lucky, I guess, Miller replies, fumbling with his coffee cup. But both men know something has changed. The Thunderlord's defeat carries implications that ripple through the criminal underworld. Reports filter in through Miller's intelligence network. Other gangs cancelling expansion plans. Tactical teams reviewing their procedures. The message spreads. Some targets aren't worth the risk. Some communities have hidden guardians. Blade regains consciousness in custody, his ranger's bravado replaced by haunted understanding. Tell the others, he warns fellow inmates. That farm, that farmer, it's not what it seems. Nothing about it was what it seemed. Shadow's voice comes through secure channels. Police found our anonymous evidence package. 3 federal agencies investigating the Thunderlords now. Their entire operations compromised. The infiltration specialist sounds satisfied. Mission complete. Reminds me of Colombia, calculator adds. Remember that cartel that thought they were military grade? Same lesson, real operators don't advertise. The demolitions experts' devices have already been removed, leaving no trace of their existence. Miller's farm returns to apparent normalcy. His security systems hide once more beneath agricultural innocence. His command center powers down, becoming just another root cellar. The warrior vanishes back beneath the farmer's disguise, but something fundamental has changed. Carlton's citizens walk taller, fear less. Local troublemakers give Miller's property wide berth. Stories spread in criminal circles about the night the Thunderlords learned the difference between thugs and soldiers. Think they learned their lesson? Shadow asks through encrypted comms. Miller watches police lead the last gang members away. Their injuries will heal, but the education they received will last forever. They learned, Miller responds, his tactical network already tracking potential future threats, and others will learn from their mistake. The Reaper's harvest may be finished, but his vigilance never ends. The fat farmer returns to his routine, his true nature hidden once more beneath. Careful deception, but the night's message remains clear. Some warriors never retire. They just find different ways to fight. 1 month after the Thunderlord's defeat, Miller's farm shows no signs of the battle that occurred there. His fields grow peacefully under the Oklahoma sun. His tractors move with agricultural purpose. The warrior remains hidden beneath the farmer's careful disguise. Guess we'll never know who really helped you that night, Earl says, restocking his store's shelves. But his eyes hold knowing respect when Miller fumbles with his coffee cup. Funny thing, no serious trouble around. Here since then, like someone's watching. Through hidden earpiece, calculator reports, last Thunderlords chapter just disbanded. Amazing how fast reputation spreads in certain circles. The demolitions expert sounds pleased. Your farm's becoming quite the legend, Reaper. Miller maintains his cover, playing the lucky farmer who survived a gang attack. But his surveillance network tracks subtle changes. Criminal elements avoid Carlton County now. Local law enforcement finds its job easier. Peace settles deeper into the community. Some walls don't need to be visible to be strong, Shadow observes, during their weekly secure check-in. Sometimes the best defense is a reputation. The infiltration specialist's words carry the wisdom of countless covert operations. In his hidden command center, Miller monitors potential threats. His tactical systems remain ready, his preparations maintained. The Reaper's vigilance never truly ends. It just adapts to new circumstances. Think they'll ever figure it out? Calculator asks one quiet evening. about the fat farmer who's really a Delta operator. Miller watches the sunset through his tactical displays, remembering other battles, other victories. "They don't need to know," he responds, his farmer's disguise comfortable as worn leather. "They just need to remember the lesson." The lesson spreads through whispered stories in criminal circles. Some targets aren't worth the risk. Some communities have hidden guardians. Some warriors never stop serving, they just find different ways to fight. Miller's farm stands peaceful under new dawn light. But beneath its agricultural facade, beneath the farmer's careful deception, a sentinel remains. Vigilant, ready if needed, prepared if called, the reaper's work is never finished. It just takes different forms.